She hid him from the henchman, thinking he was just a frightened boy. Little did she know that the boy was the missing heir to a millionaire empire. What happens next is astonishing. On a rainy afternoon in Central Park, 12-year-old Lily Stevens huddled under her small umbrella, trying to sell the last of her handmade flower arrangements. Most visitors had already left due to the downpour, and she was about to pack up when she noticed movement under one of the picnic tables near the pond. Curious, she approached carefully and found a boy about her age hiding there, his expensive clothes soaked and muddy. "Are you okay?" Lily asked, crouching down to meet his frightened eyes. The boy flinched at her voice. "Please don't tell anyone I'm here," he whispered, glancing nervously around the park. "They're looking for me." Lily raised an eyebrow. "Who's looking for you?" "My stepmother Margaret and her security team. They're trying to take me away." The boy's voice trembled. "I'm Ethan Blackwood." The name sounded vaguely familiar to Lily, but she couldn't place it. "Why would your stepmom send security after you? Are you in trouble?" Ethan shook his head vigorously. "My dad got very sick last month. He's in a coma at Manhattan General. Since then, Margaret's been different. I overheard her on the phone last night talking about having me evaluated and institutionalized so she could manage my trust fund. She said once I was declared mentally unstable, no one would question her control over the Blackwood fortune." Lily wasn't sure whether to believe such a wild story, but the genuine terror in Ethan's eyes made her hesitate. "That sounds like something from a movie." "I know how it sounds," Ethan admitted, "but please, you have to help me. My father's lawyer, Mr. Sullivan, disappeared 2 weeks ago. He was the only one who knew what was in my father's new will." Before Lily could respond, a sleek black SUV pulled up at the park entrance. A tall, elegant woman in a designer coat stepped out, flanked by 2 broad-shouldered men in dark suits. Even from a distance, Lily could see the woman scanning the park with laser-like intensity. "That's her," Ethan whispered, shrinking further under the table. Something about the scene made Lily's instincts flare. The men didn't look like normal security, more like the intimidating bouncers from the high-end clubs her older sister sometimes talked about. Their eyes were cold, methodical as they surveyed the park. "Okay," Lily decided, pulling off her rain jacket. "Put this on and take my cap. I have an idea." They swiftly exchanged outer garments, with Ethan donning Lily's colorful raincoat and baseball cap, while she put on his expensive windbreaker. She arranged her flower basket to partially obscure his face. "When I say go, walk slowly behind me, hunched over like you're helping carry flowers. Don't look up." The elegant woman approached a park attendant, showing him a photo. Even with the rain, Lily could hear snippets of their conversation. "My stepson. Ran away at medication. A delusional episodes." Lily felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. She led Ethan in a wide arc around the woman, intentionally passing within view but keeping their heads down. The woman's gaze swept over them, dismissing the flower seller and her assistant. Once they reached the eastern exit, they broke into a run, not stopping until they were several blocks away in a crowded subway station. "That was close," Lily gasped, catching her breath. "Do you have anywhere to go?" "Any family who could help." Ethan shook his head miserably. "My mom died when I was little. Dad remarried Margaret 3 years ago. The only person I trust is our old lawyer, but like I said, he's gone missing." Lily bit her lip, weighing her options. Her mum had been battling pneumonia for weeks, and bringing home a stranger, especially a rich runaway, could create complications they didn't need. But she couldn't just abandon him. "I live with my mom in a small apartment in Queens. It's not much, but you can stay tonight while we figure something out." She hesitated. "But if you're lying about any of this—" "I'm not," Ethan said earnestly, pulling a heavy gold watch from his pocket. "Here, take this as insurance. It was my grandfather's. It's worth more than most cars." Lily pushed it back. "Keep it, but you have to promise to tell my mom the whole truth, okay?" As they boarded the F train toward Queens, neither of them noticed the black sedan that had pulled up to the subway entrance, nor the man inside taking photos of them with a telephoto lens. Lily's mother, Sarah Stevens, was a practical woman who had weathered many storms in her 40 years of life. When her daughter arrived home with a soaking wet boy in tow, her first instinct was to wrap him in a blanket and make hot chocolate before asking questions. She listened patiently as Ethan repeated his story, her expression growing more concerned with each detail. "Blackwood," she finally said, recognition dawning. "You're Richard Blackwood's son, the tech investor?" Ethan nodded. "You know my dad?" "I know of him. Everyone in finance does." Sarah had worked as a bank teller before her illness forced her to take extended leave. "But this is a serious accusation about your stepmother. We need to be certain before taking any action." As if on cue, the small television in their living room switched to a breaking news segment. The screen filled with Ethan's school photo, alongside a chyron reading, "Heir to Blackwood fortune missing." "We're getting reports that 12-year-old Ethan Blackwood, son of hospitalized tech mogul Richard Blackwood, has disappeared from his Upper East Side home," the reporter announced. His stepmother, Margaret Blackwood, issued this statement moments ago. The screen cut to Margaret, her eyes red-rimmed with what appeared to be tears. "Ethan has been struggling emotionally since his father's medical emergency," she said, voice breaking perfectly on cue. "He's been refusing his medication and experiencing paranoid episodes. If anyone has seen him, please contact authorities immediately. We're worried sick about his safety." Sarah muted the television, her face pale. "They're making it look like you ran away. Or worse," Lily added, "like someone took you. They could say we kidnapped you." The implications hit all three at once. By harboring Ethan, they could be implicated in a kidnapping case involving one of the wealthiest families in New York. "We need to contact the police," Sarah suggested, reaching for her phone. "No." Ethan grabbed her wrist. "Margaret has connections everywhere. The family lawyer disappeared right after he tried to warn my dad about her. The police won't believe us without proof." Sarah hesitated, then set down her phone. "Then we need to find that proof. And we need help." She thought for a moment. "Ethan, did your father's lawyer have any family? Anyone who might know what he was working on?" Ethan's eyes lit up. "His daughter, Jessica Sullivan. She runs a bakery in Greenwich Village. Dad and I used to stop there for cookies whenever we visited Mr. Sullivan's office. She might know something." "We'll go first thing in the morning," Sarah decided, then broke into a coughing fit that left her breathless. "Mom, you're getting worse," Lily said worriedly, helping her mother to the couch. "You need to rest." "I'll be fine," Sarah insisted, though the circles under her eyes and her labored breathing suggested otherwise. That night, as Ethan slept on their fold-out couch, Lily overheard her mother talking on the phone in hushed tones. "Yes, I know what they're saying on the news. No, I believe him, Katie." The stepmother seemed too polished, too rehearsed. "We're going to find Jessica Sullivan tomorrow. I know it's risky, but what choice do we have? This boy needs help." The next morning, Sarah's fever had spiked. Despite her protests, she could barely stand without getting dizzy. "You two go without me," she insisted, writing down the address of Sullivan's bakery. "Take this emergency cash. I'll call my sister to come stay with me." "But Mom," Lily began. "No buts. That boy needs our help, and you're clever enough to do this." She squeezed Lily's hand. "Just be careful. And call me every hour." Ethan borrowed some of Lily's cousin's clothes that had been left behind during a visit, a faded hoodie and jeans that made him look nothing like the polished heir from the news. Lily tucked her hair under a beanie and wore her largest sunglasses. As they rode the subway downtown, the digital billboards above the stations flashed with Ethan's face and a number to call with information. Even more disturbing were the edited photos appearing on social media feeds, showing Ethan looking distressed with captions suggesting he had been forcibly taken. "They're making it look like I was kidnapped," Ethan whispered, pulling his hood lower. "Why would your stepmother go to such extremes?" Lily wondered. "The Blackwood Trust is worth billions," Ethan explained. "My grandfather built the company, and my dad expanded it globally. As the only direct descendant, everything comes to me when I turn 21. Margaret only gets a stipend as my guardian. But if I were declared mentally incompetent, then she'd control everything indefinitely," Lily finished, the pieces falling into place. "And with your dad unable to contradict her claims." They exited at West 4th Street and navigated the busy village streets until they spotted the small blue awning of Sullivan's bakery. Through the window they could see a woman with auburn hair arranging pastries in a display case. "That's Jessica," Ethan confirmed. As they approached the door, Lily spotted a sleek black car idling across the street. Inside sat one of the men who had been with Margaret in the park. "We've been followed," she whispered, grabbing Ethan's arm. "Don't look." Now, but one of your stepmother's men is watching the bakery. Ethan froze, his face draining of color. What do we do now? Lily thought quickly, scanning the bustling street. We need a distraction. Follow me, but stay behind that newspaper stand. When I wave, run straight into the bakery's side door. Before Ethan could protest, Lily approached two teenage street performers who were playing guitar for tips. After a brief conversation and handing over some cash, the teens nodded enthusiastically. Moments later, a commotion erupted as the performers began an impromptu and extremely loud concert directly in front of the black car, drawing a crowd that blocked the man's view. Lily waved frantically, and Ethan darted toward the bakery's service entrance. Inside, they nearly collided with Jessica Sullivan, who was carrying a tray of sourdough loaves. Ethan Blackwood. Jessica's eyes widened in recognition. Then, noticing their panicked expressions, she quickly locked the door behind them. Quick, come to the back. In the small office behind the kitchen, Jessica closed the blinds before turning to them. The entire city is looking for you. Your stepmother has offered a $100,000 reward for information. She's lying about everything, Ethan said desperately. She's trying to have me declared mentally unstable so she can control my inheritance. Mr. Sullivan, your father, was helping my dad change his will before he got sick. Now your dad is missing, and I think Margaret is behind it. Jessica's expression hardened. Dad disappeared 3 weeks ago. The police claim he embezzled client funds and fled to Mexico, but that's nonsense. He left me a message the night before he vanished, said he'd discovered something disturbing about the Blackwood finances and was meeting someone with evidence. She pulled out a small key from around her neck. He told me to keep this safe for when the heir would need it. I think he meant you, Ethan. Ethan examined the key. This looks like it goes to a safety deposit box. A sharp knock at the front door made them all jump. Through the security camera, they could see Margaret's men showing photos to passers-by. They're closing in, Jessica said grimly. We need to leave now. But where can we go? Lily asked. My mom is sick and we can't put her in more danger. Jessica thought for a moment. My grandmother left me a cabin upstate near Lake Placid. It's isolated, stocked with emergency supplies, and no one knows about it except family. She pulled out her phone and made a quick call. Jake, it's me. I need that favor we talked about. Code Sierra. Within minutes, a delivery van pulled up to the back entrance. The driver, a burly man with kind eyes, nodded at Jessica. Got your flower order ready, Jess? Need help loading it? This is my cousin Jake, Jessica explained as they climbed into the van, hiding under empty bakery boxes. He makes deliveries for me sometimes. He'll get us out of the city. As they drove north, Ethan told them everything he knew, how his father had grown suspicious of Margaret's spending habits, how Mr. Sullivan had been investigating offshore accounts, how his father had fallen mysteriously ill after confronting Margaret about changes to his investment portfolio. Dad was preparing to divorce her, Ethan revealed. The night before he collapsed, they had a huge argument. I heard him say he was changing his will. 6 hours later, they arrived at a rustic log cabin nestled among pine trees, overlooking a serene lake. Inside, Jessica went straight to a loose floorboard under the living room rug and pulled out a metal box. Grandma always said to keep important things where no one would look, she explained, inserting a different key into the box. Inside were documents, an old revolver, and a thick envelope marked with the Blackwood name. Spreading the papers across the kitchen table, they discovered financial records showing millions diverted to shell companies connected to Margaret's maiden name, a draft of Richard Blackwood's updated will that excluded Margaret entirely, and a letter from Mr. Sullivan expressing concerns that Richard's sudden illness might not be natural. Most disturbing was a psychiatric evaluation form with Ethan's name on it, already signed by 2 doctors Jessica didn't recognize, ready for court filing. Margaret had been preparing to have Ethan declared incompetent even before his father's illness. She was planning this for months, Ethan whispered, staring at the papers. If she had succeeded in taking me that day in the park, you would have lost everything, Lily finished. Not just your inheritance, but your freedom. Jessica studied a bank statement. According to this, my father discovered a safety deposit box at First Manhattan Bank containing medical evidence about your father's condition. That must be what this key opens. She held up the key she'd been safeguarding. "We need to get to that bank," Ethan said. "Not so fast," Jessica cautioned. "You're all over the news. Margaret has effectively painted you as mentally unstable, and the rest of us as kidnappers. We need a plan." That evening, they gathered around the cabin's old radio, listening to news updates. The situation had escalated. Margaret had increased the reward to $500,000, and security footage from near the bakery had captured blurry images of Lily and Ethan. The media was now reporting a coordinated abduction involving multiple suspects. "They're making us sound like criminals," Lily said, her voice shaking as she thought of her mother alone in Queens. She tried calling home again, but the call went straight to voicemail. "We need to contact someone who can help turn the narrative," Jessica suggested. "I know an investigative journalist who specializes in corporate corruption, Rebecca Martinez. She questioned the official story about my father from the beginning." As night fell, they developed a plan. Jessica would disguise herself and visit the bank to access the safety deposit box, while Jake would check on Sarah. Meanwhile, Lily and Ethan would remain hidden at the cabin. What they didn't know was that 2 days before their arrival, Margaret's security team had already located the cabin through property records and installed hidden cameras throughout the main room. As they discussed their plans late into the night, their every word was being transmitted to a monitoring station miles away. The morning sun cast long shadows through the cabin windows as Jessica prepared her disguise. Using makeup techniques she'd learned during a brief college theater phase, she transformed herself into a woman 20 years older, gray-streaked hair, wrinkles around the eyes and posture that suggested arthritis. "Remember," she instructed before leaving, "don't go outside, don't answer the door, and don't use the landline. I'll be back by sunset." Jake had left earlier to check on Sarah, promising to return with supplies. Alone in the cabin, Lily and Ethan tried to distract themselves by playing old board games found in a closet, but anxiety made concentration impossible. "Do you think they'll find what we need in that safety deposit box?" Lily asked, moving her game piece without counting spaces. "I hope so," Ethan replied. "Without evidence, it's just my word against Margaret's, and she's very convincing." Around noon, they heard a vehicle approaching. Peering carefully through the curtains, they spotted a forest ranger's truck pulling up. "Maybe they're just checking the area," Lily whispered. But when 2 men in ranger uniforms stepped out, something about their posture seemed wrong. "Those aren't rangers," Ethan hissed, recognizing one of Margaret's security personnel despite the disguise. They retreated to the kitchen, frantically searching for another exit. The back door led only to the open lakefront. They would be spotted immediately. The windows were too small for escape. "The cellar," Ethan suggested, remembering a door they'd noticed earlier. They slipped down the narrow stairs just as they heard a key turning in the front lock. The men had a copy of the cabin key. In the musty cellar, they found an old rowboat, fishing gear, and a small window too dirty to see through. "It might lead to the lake," Lily whispered, trying to wipe away decades of grime. "We could take the boat." Before they could formulate a plan, heavy footsteps creaked overhead. The men were searching the cabin systematically. It would only be minutes before they checked the cellar. Meanwhile, Jessica had successfully entered First Manhattan Bank. Her disguise held up to scrutiny as she presented identification matching the elderly persona she'd created. Using the key from her father, she accessed a medium-sized safety deposit box. Inside, she found medical reports suggesting Richard Blackwood had been exposed to a nearly undetectable toxin that caused symptoms resembling a neurological disorder. Emails between Margaret and a doctor discussing untraceable methods, and a flash drive containing audio recordings of Margaret discussing with an associate how to remove obstacles to controlling the Blackwood fortune. Jessica photographed everything with a disposable phone, then carefully replaced the contents and exited the bank. Only when she was blocks away did she notice a familiar black sedan trailing her. Back at the cabin, Lily and Ethan were running out of options. The men upstairs had discovered signs of their presence and were now approaching the cellar door. In desperation, they climbed inside the dusty old rowboat, pulling a tarp over themselves. The door creaked open, and flashlight beams swept across the dark space. One of the men descended the stairs, his footsteps stopping just beside the boat. Nothing. Down here, but junk, he called up. They must have fled into the woods. Let's check the perimeter. As soon as the men left to search outside, Lily and Ethan emerged from their hiding place. We need to get out while they're gone, Lily insisted. Working together, they managed to remove the rowboat's oar locks to reduce noise, then carried the lightweight aluminum craft to the small cellar window. It was barely wide enough, but after removing the frame, they squeezed the boat through and themselves after it. They pushed off from shore silently, using hands instead of oars at first to avoid detection. Only when they were 100 yards from shore did they insert the oars and begin rowing properly toward the center of the lake. "Where are we going?" Ethan asked, glancing back at the shrinking cabin. "There's a small island in the middle with an old fishing shelter," Lily said, remembering Jessica mentioning it. "We can hide there until they return." As they rowed, Lily's phone, which she'd kept off to conserve battery, suddenly vibrated with an incoming text. It was from an unknown number. "This is Jake. Your mother is gone. Men came to apartment, setting trap for you. Don't return to cabin." Lily's heart plummeted. "They have my mum," she whispered, showing Ethan the message. On the island, they found the dilapidated fishing shelter, little more than a shack with a leaky roof and a rusted wood stove. As night fell, they spotted flashlight beams sweeping the shoreline around the entire lake. Margaret's men had called for reinforcements. "We're trapped," Ethan said, his voice hollow. "And now they have your mom because of me." "This isn't your fault," Lily insisted, though fear for her mother gnawed at her. "Margaret is the one doing this." They spent a miserable night in the shelter, taking turns keeping watch. At dawn, they spotted a small boat approaching from the far side of the lake, not from the direction of the cabin. "Get ready to run," Lily whispered, but as the boat drew nearer, they recognized Jake's broad shoulders. "Thank goodness I found you," he said, as they helped pull his boat ashore. "They're everywhere. Roadblocks on every access road, drones searching the forest. They've got the cabin surrounded." "What about my mom?" Lily demanded. Jake's expression was grim. "They took her to a private medical facility owned by Blackwood Enterprises. They're claiming she needs treatment, but it's clearly to draw you out." "And Jessica?" "She got the evidence but was followed." "She's hiding with my brother in Albany." Jake handed them a satellite phone. Jessica called the journalist, Rebecca Martinez. "She's on board and meeting us tonight at a prearranged location. She believes we can break this story wide open with the evidence," Jessica gathered. As they huddled in the shelter reviewing their options, a whirring sound overhead made them freeze. A small drone hovered outside the shelter's broken window, its camera lens focusing on their faces before zipping away across the lake. "They found us," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "It's over." Jake's expression hardened. "Not yet, it isn't." He pulled out a flare gun from his emergency kit. "I was a Marine before I started delivering bread. Let's give them something to chase." Jake fired the flare high over the lake, creating a brilliant red streak against the morning sky. "That'll draw their attention. Now listen carefully. We have one chance to do this right." While Margaret's security team converged on the island, Jake led Lily and Ethan to a hidden cove on the far side, where an old camping canoe was concealed under branches. "My brother and I used to fish here as kids. This was our secret spot." They paddled silently along the shoreline, using overhanging trees for cover, until they reached a secluded inlet where a weathered pickup truck was waiting. Jessica sat in the passenger seat, her face tight with worry. "I got everything," she said, holding up her disposable phone. Medical reports proving Richard was being systematically poisoned, financial records showing Margaret siphoning millions, and audio of her planning to have Ethan institutionalized. "But they're closing in fast. They've got roadblocks on every major highway." "What about my mom?" Lily asked. Rebecca confirmed she's at Lakeside Wellness Center, a private facility Margaret controls. "She's being held in the East Wing, supposedly for respiratory treatment." Ethan's hands clenched into fists. "This has gone on long enough. I want to end this today." Together they formulated a plan that was as bold as it was dangerous. While Jessica and Rebecca would prepare a comprehensive media package with all the evidence, Ethan would offer himself as bait, contacting Margaret directly and agreeing to meet in exchange for Sarah's release. "It's too risky," Lily protested. "It's the only way," Ethan insisted. "She wants me more than anything. Once she thinks she's won, she'll let her guard down." Late that afternoon, Margaret received the call she'd been waiting for. Ethan, sounding defeated, offered to surrender himself if she would release Lily's mother. Triumphant, Margaret agreed to a meeting at the Lakeside Wellness Center's private dock at sunset. As twilight descended over the lake, a small motorboat approached the facility's wooden pier. Ethan sat alone in the stern, his face pale but determined. On shore, Margaret waited with 4 security men and a wheelchair, ostensibly for Ethan's comfort, but in reality to begin the process of making him appear mentally incapacitated. "Ethan, darling," Margaret called, her voice dripping with false concern. "We've been so worried. Your medication is waiting, and the doctors are eager to help you through this episode." Ethan stepped onto the dock, keeping his distance. "Where's Mrs. Stevens? You promised to release her." Margaret gestured to the building behind her. "She's being discharged as we speak. Such a shame about her illness. Pneumonia can be so debilitating at her age." "I want to see her first," Ethan insisted. Margaret's smile tightened. "All in good time, dear. First, let's get you settled." She nodded to her men, who moved forward to flank Ethan. At that moment, Sarah appeared at the facility entrance, supported by a nurse but walking under her own power. Seeing Ethan on the dock, her eyes widened in alarm. "Now, Ethan," Margaret said, extending her hand, "it's time to come home." Ethan took a deep breath. "Before I go with you, I want to know something. Did you really think you could get away with poisoning my father? With falsifying medical records to have me institutionalized? With stealing millions from the company?" Margaret's composed facade cracked slightly. "What ridiculous stories has that woman been filling your head with? This is exactly why you need professional help, Ethan." "I have proof," Ethan continued, his voice growing stronger. "Mr. Sullivan found everything before you had him kidnapped. The offshore accounts, the fake medical evaluations, the conversations with doctors willing to declare me unstable." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Margaret's face. "You're confused, Ethan. This paranoid behavior is why you need me declared incompetent," Ethan interrupted. "So you can control the Blackwood fortune, instead of just receiving your trustee stipend." Margaret's pleasant mask slipped completely. "You ungrateful little brat," she hissed, advancing on him. "After everything I've done to secure your future." "You mean secure your future?" Ethan shot back. "At my expense." Margaret signaled to her security team, "Take him inside, now." As the men moved toward Ethan, a brilliant spotlight suddenly illuminated the dock from the water. Jake's fishing boat emerged from the darkness. Rebecca Martinez standing at the bow with a camera crew, broadcasting live to her station's website and social media channels. "Margaret Blackwood," Rebecca called out, her voice amplified by a megaphone. "Care to comment on the evidence we've uncovered about your systematic attempt to seize control of the Blackwood enterprises by incapacitating both Richard and Ethan Blackwood?" Simultaneously, police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Jessica had delivered the complete evidence package to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division hours earlier, and agents had been dispatched with arrest warrants. Margaret's security team, realizing they were on camera and hearing law enforcement approaching, began to back away. Margaret herself stood frozen, her carefully constructed plans crumbling before her eyes. "This is absurd," she sputtered. "I'm trying to help my disturbed stepson." "Save it for your attorney," Jessica said, emerging from behind a boathouse with Lily. "My father is alive, by the way. The FBI found him yesterday, held captive in a property owned by your shell company. He's already given his statement about how you threatened him when he discovered your embezzlement." Margaret lunged toward Ethan in a final desperate move, but Sarah, showing surprising strength for someone recovering from pneumonia, stepped between them. "You will not touch that boy," she said firmly, and when Margaret tried to push past her, Sarah delivered a perfectly placed right hook that sent the woman sprawling onto the dock. FBI agents swarmed the area, taking Margaret into custody, along with her security team. As flashbulbs popped and reporters shouted questions, Ethan found Lily in the chaos and hugged her tightly. "It's over," he whispered. Really over. 6 months later, Richard Blackwood had made a remarkable recovery once the poisoning stopped. Though still using a wheelchair, his mental faculties had returned completely, allowing him to reassume control of his company and care for his son. Margaret faced multiple federal charges including attempted kidnapping, fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and attempted unlawful confinement. Without her wealthy connections, she accepted a plea deal that would keep her in prison for decades. Jessica reopened her bakery with an attached legal aid office to help those who couldn't afford proper representation. Sullivan Law for the People became her father's new focus after retiring from corporate practice. Sarah's health improved with proper treatment funded by a generous grant from the Blackwood Foundation. She returned to school to finish her business degree, inspired by her role in uncovering the conspiracy. As for Lily, she never had to sell flowers again. Instead, Ethan convinced his father to fund a scholarship program for underprivileged youth. With Lily as its first recipient, the gold watch that Ethan had tried to give her that rainy day in the park remained in her keepsake box, a reminder that the greatest adventures often begin with small acts of kindness. "You saved my life," Ethan told her one afternoon as they sat in Central Park, at the very picnic table where they'd first met. Lily smiled. "And you changed mine. I guess we're even." "Not even close," Ethan laughed. "I think I'll be thanking you for a long time to come." And as they walked through the park together, the future stretching bright before them, they both knew that some friendships, forged in moments of courage and trust, last a lifetime.